We cover the different types and factors affecting demand in another video. In this one, we're going to focus on the demand curve and how it's used. So we define demand as the quantity of a product that consumers are willing and able to purchase at a given price and over a given time period. In this video, we'll focus on the quantity and price part of this. It's not too hard to imagine that the more expensive something is, the lower the quantity demanded will be. You might buy 10 bars of chocolate for 10p each, but only afford one bar if they're £1. And from that quite simple logic, we get the law of demand. This says that the quantity demanded goes up when price goes down, and vice versa. Or in other words, that quantity demanded is inversely proportional to price. So let's represent this law in graph format. We put quantity on the x-axis and price on the y-axis, and can then plot on how quantity demanded is affected by changes in price. Based on the law of demand, if something has a high price, then the quantity demanded will be low, so we could put a point here. If something has a low price, then quantity demanded would be much higher, shown on the graph here. By connecting the 2 points, we can clearly see how quantity increases when price decreases, making the downward sloping demand curve. Let's bring this to life by putting some numbers in. This demand curve is showing flights for a holiday. I'm going to put the price of each flight at £5. And going across to the demand curve and then down to the quantity, we see that quantity demanded will be very high. This should be obvious. If flights are £5 each, then lots of people will want to buy them. If we raise the price for each flight to £100 though, the number demanded would fall quite rapidly, as fewer people can now afford or are willing to buy them. Whenever there's a change in price, the opposite will happen to quantity. And these changes within the demand curve are called contractions or extensions. If the price increases, then quantity demanded decreases or contracts. We say that the price increase has caused a contraction up the curve. The opposite would be, if price decreases, then quantity demanded increases. We say that price decrease has caused an extension down the curve. But what happens if the price stays the same but demand changes? Say if we start with a product or service with a price of £500 and 100 are demanded in a given time. If I want to keep the price at £500 but show that demand goes down to 50, my new demand curve would be here. Or I could continue at the same price but show that 150 units are now demanded, and my curve would move to here. What we're seeing is the entire demand curve, the whole line, moving either to the left or to the right. So we'd say that the demand curve has shifted. It is important to stress that a shift in the demand curve means that the quantity demanded has changed at each price point. It's not isolated to one price. So by shifting demand at £500 also means I've changed the amount of demand at £50, £100, £1,000 and so on. Okay, so that's how the curves shift, but why does it actually happen? What causes the shifts? To answer this, we have to review our factors affecting demand. Let's first think about shifting the demand curve to the right. So we're asking ourselves what causes demand to increase at any given price. As we saw in our other video, some of the main factors affecting demand are price changes to related products, changes to consumer income, and changes to consumer preferences. If the shift was related to a price increase to a related product, that related product would have to be a substitute good. So if this was a shifting demand curve for tea, it might be because of a price increase to coffee. As coffee is more expensive, more people choose tea instead, and the demand increases for tea at all the price points. If the shift was because of a fall in price of a related product, then that product would have to be a complementary good. People usually drink tea with milk, and so if the price of milk falls, the demand for tea might increase. The shift could also be explained by changes to consumer income. If income's increased, then the curve must be for a normal good, because demand increases for these goods when incomes go up. But if incomes had decreased and the curve shifted to the right, then the curve must be for an inferior good. And finally, changes to consumer preferences could also cause the demand curve to shift to the right, but with a bit less of a clear pattern. It might be that they find some extra health benefits for a product, which makes it more popular, and so demand increases at all prices. That's how the factors affecting demand shift the curve to the right, and it's more or less the opposite for shifting the curve to the left. So we're now asking what makes demand decrease. For changes to the price of a related product, if the price increases, then the good must be complementary. Increase in tea prices will decrease the demand for milk. If price decreases on the other product, then it's a substitute good. So decreasing the price of butter would decrease the demand for margarine. With changes to consumer income, if income increased, then demand for inferior goods would fall, as you'd want to spend your extra money on higher quality things. If income decreases, then demand for normal goods would fall, because we wouldn't be able to afford them. Negative PR, or a product just falling out of fashion, could equally explain the fall in demand and the curve shifting further to the left. So, in summary, the law of demand states that quantity demanded is inversely proportional to price. The demand curve has quantity on the x-axis and price on the y-axis with a downward sloping line. Changes in price cause movements up and down along the same demand curve. Increases in price cause a contraction up the curve, and decreases in price cause an extension down the curve. And finally, changes to the factors affecting demand will shift the entire curve to the left or right. Factors causing an increase in demand send the curve to the right, and those causing a fall in demand send the curve to the left.